Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Ragewood here, back with another video. This one's going to be very boring. This one is looking at the Season 3 endgame boss. If you don't want to sort of learn or look into that, stop watching now. For those of you that have stayed, thank you. This is not going to be a use this team for this score kind of video. I'm simply going to be talking more about the mechanics of the boss itself, okay? Things that I've picked up in sort of 30 odd hours. I was testing it over the weekend and today. But there are some caveats to this. We know that the boss will change. It is quite, you could say, overtuned at the moment, largely down to its passive. The passive being whenever a skill is used, he gets 50% damage reduction, and that stacks. So as soon as 2 battle skills go off, you don't do any damage. It's impossible to get that 140 million score. So we have been told it's going to change. We've been told they are numerical changes. Now that could come down from 50% down to 5% stacking damage reduction. That might make sense. They might get rid of it altogether. We don't know. There is also some talk going around that the version that I'm currently fighting on the test server is the version that will come after the 50% health, where it gets harder. So take a lot of this with a pinch of salt. My guess is that the mechanics are going to stay the same, but say the damage reduction will be reduced. So to keep that damage reduction off, a lot of it is going to still apply. I've also looked into the timings of certain things, when buffs come up and drop off, etc. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So first things first, I have written sort of a Word document of things that I sort of would like to discuss. So I'm going to sort of refer back to that occasionally, and hopefully I don't miss anything from that. So first thing, gear sets. In the chief challenges, Emperor is best, just because the attack damage or the attack rating on the bosses is very low, so you get a benefit from it. But in Vortex, Aerial is better. So what's better here? Now I did do a couple of short tests, just using Emerald in Aerial, Emerald in Empress set with attack down, and it would appear that Aerial is better in this fight. Okay, so do bear that in mind. Now the only difference is as you can see, because I was trying it with Shaltar, is for anyone doing derivative damage, you're still better off using the unclean set over Aerial. So Aerial for your regular damage dealers, unclean for your derivative damage dealers. That's just I guess I'll play the two sort of short videos now. First one being Aerial, second one being the Emperor set, just so you can see from there. there we are. So that is your gear sets then. So something else that I did play with, as it were, you're trying to get round this just here. So he gains 1 stack of understandable solidity when taking skill damage, removes 1 stack of solidity when the monster casts a skill. This is wrong. He actually loses all stacks of solidity when he casts a skill. Okay. But I was trying to think of other ways to reduce the number of stacks from this. And for teams like Shadow and Dauntless, for example, you know, there might be an argument for using finality gloves. Now, those are the gloves that use give you a 35% just damage boost in general, but you lose, I think, 35% recharge speed on your ultimate. Let's just double check that. These ones just here. Yeah, 35% increased damage. Oh, sorry, but 50% recharge speed. Now, this was something I thought about in the Shadow. I have yet to test it on Dauntless and things like that. But what I was thinking with Shadow specifically, obviously they get their ultimate energy just from basic attacking. So I thought, well, if you put them in a Rhapsodist set, and then you put, so they attack faster, and then you use the finality gloves, they're going to cast their battle skills less, which will give you less triggers on the solidity boss passive. And they'll recharge their ultimates faster. Now, if you're lucky enough to get an Ozzel, you'll know that when he's in his demon form, he's just basic attacking, and that's where his damage comes from. And you want to try and keep him in that form as much as possible. So the one team I will show you, I've been trying with a few here, did 30 million. I'll go over why this in a moment. A lot of you might already have figured that one out by now. But I did have Oddle in a Rhapsodist set with the Finality gloves. He was the only damage dealer, and the team did around 30 million damage, which is obviously way off the pace. Now, I did mess up slightly. You'll notice there is no Witch's Remains here. I should have put Witch's Remains on Gulend. And I had Taldi in Skill Haste set because I actually turned his ultimate off. I just wanted him to use his battle skill to keep giving Ozzel Shadow Energy so we could stay in that form, etc. So this sort of idea is something that I still need to test as well. So Shadow, it certainly seems to work. Just the lack of damage dealers here is what's killing me ultimately, or killing the score. But it did okay, you know. So yes, something to be said potentially about that on your gear sets too. So we finished talking about gear sets. I'm now going to start talking about just some things that I have learnt, okay? So first thing we're going to talk about are passive abilities, okay? Now, passive abilities don't seem to trigger the boss's solidity passive. There are some exceptions to the rule, though. And they are Flora, Dritzt, Danella, and Urzilus. Where is he? Now, most people wouldn't use maybe these front three. I say most people. I don't have Dritz because I skipped season 1. Summons are generally considered very bad. and Danella isn't really a boss fighter. But Flora, you probably would. You probably use her in Vortex. You probably use her in some of your chief challenges. But she is one of the 4 heroes that I've tested so far where her passive actually triggers the boss's solidity. Now, the boss specifically says skill damage. Every time an ally successfully uses a wild or triggers a wild, the familiar will unleash a fireball at the ally's target, dealing fire damage. This is classed as an ability. So in a wild team, potentially you're going to get multiple triggers of this, which is going to stack multiple stacks very quickly, so you're doing no damage in the current state. If that damage reduction changes, then of course you'll still be doing less damage. Whether it's 0, no one can't be sure. Urzilus. Now, actually, in my testings, summons are actually pretty good, which seems amazing to say. But your skeletons, for example, mostly are basic attacking. And Prempster, her battle skill, where she summons the things, don't trigger it either. So a team with maybe like a Gaia a Prempster, and maybe like a Korth, the rare Korth, which gives them attack speed, could be great. Now, I personally wasn't able to score higher than... Sorry, I got itchy leg. I think it was like 12 mil. I did... So my first attempt got 3 or 4. Timed, I got sort of 10 million with Cursor, and I used Yulia rather than Korth. But there is some potential there for summons if you can get it working. I just haven't. But why is Urzilus bad? Okay, his passive, when after 3 seconds after an allied undead unit dies, he summons a skeleton himself. Now, these skeletons gain an ability down here where they slash the enemy in front of them, dealing necrotic damage. That is classed as a skill in the eyes of this boss. So again, I actually got... I tested it with just him, but I actually got up to 4 stacks just with 2 skeletons, because it was just him that did it here. So again, not ideal. I did take a short video to show this to someone else. I will try and shorten it though for you now, because it's a 42 seconds on to the end of what is already going to be likely a fairly lengthy video. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I will try and shorten it down and show you now. You might need to pause it towards the end, but you'll see it will jump from 2 to 4 stacks. So there you go. Hopefully you saw that. Danella, her bird, flies at regular intervals, dealing radiant damage. Again, class as a skill, creates a stack. We want to avoid that. And then Dritzt. I know Dritzt is loved in the heart of many people, but when the pair attack, both of them gain planar ally. Basic attacks deal cold damage to the target. He pounces, dealing cold damage, classed as a skill, so triggers it. And also, as well, Dritzt, because he's got 2 heroes that are doing battle skills, essentially. Again, not great. So those are the only 4 passives that I have tested so far that create a skill damage which triggers a stack on the boss. Other heroes to sort of avoid, not from a passive skill point of view, but just in general. Ice Blast. Ice Blast, the way they do their damage is by repeatedly casting their battle skills over and over again. I tested this. I wanted to see how many stacks I could build up, and the most I got to was 11 stacks, so that's 550% damage reduction. Very bad. but I was regularly sat around 7 or 8, so they are unfortunately out, which is very disappointing because we all use Ice Blast for boss killers. Joyce is another one that is not good because of his phantoms. He can have up to 3 of them at the same time, and when there's a fortune phantom summoned, they emulate his battle skills. So again, you got 3 of them, 4 stacks. Again, we don't want that. We want to avoid stacks. Isatarian was the same, unfortunately, because his dragon did it too. So yeah, obviously, if you've got no choice, then use the heroes that you've got. But to say, I'm just going over ones that aren't ideal, I suppose, is the best thing. So again, just a few there. There are some other ones. I've got a big old spreadsheet that I've been working through with members of my alliance. Let me just double check that there was no one else really to avoid. Just see, making notes. What other notes did I make? Oh, okay. So, Zadok, staying on necrosis. Zadok, he does do a lot of damage, but his passive, he gains ultimate energy when summoned units dies, so he's going to cast his ultimate more often, which in theory isn't bad, but it is up for this fight because you're just going to keep the damage reduction stacks up for longer, as it were. You're going to have them up more often, which again you don't want to do. Now, if you time it, for example, to go off at a certain point, when the boss is fragile, that could work. But he's not going to work if you just let him run loose. Again, you want to avoid that if you can. And there was, I'm pretty sure there was one other. I think it was an epic I was looking at. Oh, Hervolm, the lightning dude, was the other one. Thunderbolt Man. Now, again, Thunderbolt isn't necessarily going to be used on this fight because it's an AoE thing, but Electrocution increases his battle skill. When enemies electrocution is triggered, reduces the battle skill. So again, he's going to be going off more often. So just someone else to avoid, really. So this is there's no sort of organisation to this, and I do apologise. Again, I've just got a Word document of things that I just want to talk about, really. So the boss has multiple abilities, and he's on a 30-second rotation. Now, let's say these stacks drop off after he uses an ability, so at 6 seconds, at 12 seconds, at 18, etc., etc. All battle skills I've looked at and ultimates will trigger once. Okay, will trigger 1 stack of this passive just here. That includes things that multi-hit. Okay, so things like Thelindor, for example. He will cast 1 beam, or he casts multiple beams, but the first one will trigger that passive damage reductions. The following ones won't add to it. Okay, it will just be 1 trigger. The same goes for people like Foley, for example. That's who I tested it with initially. Then I looked at other things as well. So yeah, it will only trigger once, multi-hitters. The other thing, Dauntless heroes, where it says someone like Suther, this is considered these attacks are counted as basic attacks. They will still trigger once. they will still trigger the boss's passive once in my testing, which again is annoying because it's considered a base stat, but you will still get one. Something else just to remember. Ardreth, when she uses a thing, her basic attacks, the first one that hits will trigger the solidity passive of this boss. So, yeah, there's a lots of things that will trigger a passive. Even someone like Shaltar, for example, his abilities will trigger once, etc. So, as long as it is not a passive ability, all battle skills and ultimates are going to trigger that solidity. Yeah, there's that. So, one tactic that I have seen people use is to sort of alpha strike at the end of the boss's rotation here. So, at the end of the boss's rotation, he gains fragility, where he increases the damage he takes by 100%. So, what most people are doing is they are casting someone with defense down at 29 seconds. And then when the boss clears it, the stack, they alpha strike with their nuker, whatever it is, at 30 seconds. The thing is, the boss's passive, that passive damage reduction, goes up before the damage is dealt. So you are, in theory, never going to do 100% of your attack damage. You'll always be doing 50% of your ultimate damage because of that passive. Alright, but defense down, taking 100% increased damage, and he's got a 50% damage reduction. This is going to be your best opportunity to do your nukers. So you're going to want to set up around here, let the boss clear, and then alpha strike. But as you can see here, when he hits enemies with outbursts, it reduces their ultimate energy by 30%. There is a very small window that you can cast your ultimates here, okay? Even if you don't have a buff. Because the ult down doesn't actually kick in until sort of around 31 seconds. So if you time someone to go at 30 seconds, you will go off before you lose the ultimate energy down. So if let me try show you, do I have someone just in any form of gear where they won't just die straight away? What about you? What about you? What about you? Nope. Good end, you'll do. In you go. And let me just throw a Scylla in there just because she'll help keep her alive. Sure. So we'll speed this up. We'll go through everything. We'll just let Scylla go whenever she wants. La 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 la. So Scylla will cleanse. So here we go. So I can still cast my ult. I haven't lost my ult energy gauge yet here, but the boss has started casting. So I will go here, I'll place the attack down or whatever, and then he attacks me sort of at 31, 32 seconds. So there is a small window for you to alpha strike and try and do as much damage as you can. Okay, so a few more little things. So damage over time effects do not trigger the passive. So things like poison ticks, burn ticks, thunderbolt ticks, corrosion ticks, they don't trigger stacks. However, if the boss has 100% damage reduction up, I don't think these do damage. It's something I need to look into a bit more because I think corrosion might be exception to the rule, but it's something that I would need to look at in more detail again. But to say they do not, the physical ticking damage will not trigger more stacks. Recharge speed penalty does not work. The boss says down here that he is where is it? he's immune to ultimate down effects. So, as I say, that isn't just someone like AG, where when she hits, she does damage, she does ult speed reduction. Say, recharge speed penalty does not work either, unfortunately. And debuffs will still be placed, even if you don't do any damage. So, let's say you've got an Elminster, you're placing accuracy down and attack down. Even if the boss has 2 stacks, so you don't physically do any damage, the debuffs will still be placed. So, last thing here then, guys. Again, I haven't really gone into too many team comps. Obviously, I did show one earlier. Just some general thoughts and people ideas at the moment. Multiple supports are probably going to be needed. I have tried it with a single support and it just doesn't seem to work. So it is something you are going to need. And ideally, if you can, you'll want to bring at least someone who can cleanse. Now, I have 2 of the queens already on the battlefield. There are a couple more. If you have these guys, congratulations. Asilla, Rayta, and Glend all have full team cleanses on their ultimates. Asilla is probably the best because she also has debuff immunity. So as soon as the boss lands that block buffs on his 3rd ability, you can cleanse it. You've got your debuff immunity as well, so you won't get the heal and shield debuff either. So she is great here, but I say Gulend and Rayta will still dispel all debuffs on all allies. So after the boss puts your heal and shield block up, you can cleanse that off, or if you want to, like I did with my shadow team, I had Gulend clear the block buffs, debuff, and then I had Thea with debuff immunity. The nice thing about that is I had, say, Gulend clear the buff prohibition, I had Thea put debuff immunity up, which stopped that, but then it also meant I had a buff at the end here, so I didn't get the alt energy down. So that was sort of a good thing to look at. These 3 are legendaries though, and not easy to come across. But someone else you could use, which doesn't work quite as well, but is still the only king, short kings, alright, is Fitz. He gains healing and transfers all ally debuffs to him. Each successful transfer grants additional healing. So you will get rid of the debuffs off your team. That is great. However, chances are you're transferring the 50% heal down to him, so he's not going to heal as much. And I don't know of anyone that just cleanses a single man. Someone like Nathaniel or Enna will clear 1 debuff, but they won't do a full cleanse on 1 dude. So something to look at there. Now, one thing I did think about was Torin. Torin has debuff immunity, so I wondered whether you could time that on him, but then you'll have the block buffs up, so it won't really work. So ignore that thought altogether. But say Fitz could potentially be an option if you can keep him alive through you build him really tanky and things. Something again just to consider team-wise. One last thing then before I go. The massive Colossus chest is something that we should all perhaps consider. The block buffs, I feel like, is the massive issue in the middle here. The boss has 100% chance of dispelling 2 buffs from us on this third ability. So you either need 375 total resistance. That's the number that I managed to get to and go 2 full rotations without getting a debuff. Everything less than that, I occasionally got one. So yeah, you either need tons and tons of resistance to ignore this, or you need to be placing three buffs on yourself when this goes off. So when it dispels 2, you've still got 1, so you don't get the buff prohibition. That's quite hard. This goes off at 18 seconds. Your buffs will drop by the time that the boss's ultimate comes around, so you get your ultimate speed down. Like, there probably is a workaround, but it's very hard, okay? But I feel like this is the issue. So the massive Colossus chests might come in clutch here. These are the mythical chests that drop from which one is it? Echoes of the Ancient Spirit. I think these drop in Rot. I'm pretty sure these drop in Rot. But the wearer dispels 1 debuff from themselves when they cast their ultimate. Now, this is great because it will get rid of the buff prohibition. The downside is it means you have just used all your ults in the same window, doing no damage at that point. So, you know, this might only be good for a Dauntless or a Shadow team or something, maybe. There's something else to think about. That's it from me now, guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the first sort of few rounds of my Shadow team, the one team that I did do, which did manage to score 30 million. So hopefully you can see sort of the idea behind it, how it worked, etc. Just going over the gear one more time. What I will do, actually, I will pop Gulend in the Witch's Remains instead to try and maybe score a little bit higher, and we'll see how it goes. So Thea is in a Puppeteer set, Torrid in Ancestral Protection. We got Taldi in Skill Haste set, just so he does this as often as he can, and Gudland just in a little bit of a sort of damage set. Not the ideal set though, but the gear on the test server account here is rubbish. So yeah, I'm going to push play now. I've got my timing set up here. As you can see, I've got Glenn going at 22 seconds, Thea going at 23, so we've got the cleanse. What that should be actually is 23 and 24. Everyone else is just going ham when they want to. So thank you for watching. If you have stayed till this point, I know it's a very long, boring video. I do apologise, but hopefully it will have helped some of you. Yeah, so we say we're gonna just leave that here, and yeah, thanks once again. There we are.